Right now, there is this metal box sitting outside your house that the federal government just made incredibly complicated and honestly, potentially incredibly expensive to fix.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a massive shift.
Right, because we usually just, ignore our air conditioners until they literally stop working.
Uh-huh.
But if your home's AC unit was built before January 1st, 2025, the chemical lifeblood inside it is effectively on its way to being illegal to manufacture in new residential systems here in the US.
It really is. And from the perspective of the average homeowner, it feels like it practically happened overnight. I mean, we aren't just talking about some abstract environmental policy happening in a boardroom somewhere.
No, not at all.
We're talking about multi-thousand-dollar decisions that you will eventually have to make about your own home.
Yeah. And that is exactly the mission of our deep dive today. We are going to cut through the neighborhood rumors, the intense Facebook panic about so-called flammable AC units.
Oh, the Facebook panic is real.
It's everywhere. And these scary high-pressure stories about your current air conditioner suddenly being outlawed. So we've pulled a really fascinating industry interview from ACHR News featuring a guy named Dave Hartzell.
Right.
He is a master HVAC technician with like 45 years of experience down in Kingfisher, Oklahoma. So we're using his boots-on-the-ground insights to extract exactly what this massive regulation shift means for your safety, your home, and of course your wallet.
And prioritizing that financial aspect is absolutely crucial because, in a world of constant information overload, understanding the actual mechanisms, the real why behind this transition is the only way you can protect yourself.
I completely agree.
Because when you don't understand the underlying logic of a new technology, you just become highly vulnerable to high-pressure sales tactics. I mean, picture a contractor standing in your living room in the middle of a massive August heat wave telling you the government banned your AC.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Right. And suddenly you are writing this massive check out of pure fear.
Which is the exact scenario we are going to prevent today. So looking at this article from ACHR News, it seems like the manufacturing side of the industry just hit a massive brick wall on January 1st, 2025.
Yeah, a hard stop.
But before anyone panics about having to, rip out their current unit, I really want to understand these new chemicals because I'm seeing names like R454B and R32 being thrown around in the sources, and they carry a label that is understandably freaking people out.
The flammable label.
Yes, they're being called mildly flammable.
I mean, why is that word suddenly being used to describe the appliance that literally cools my living room?
It is definitely a jarring word to hear in relation to your house, I'll give you that. But to understand it, we really have to look at the historical cycle of refrigerants.
Okay, take us through it.
Well, a lot of people probably remember the era of Freon, which was technically called R22.
Oh, yeah, my dad used to talk about Freon all the time.
Exactly. But that got phased out globally because its chemical makeup was, literally depleting the ozone layer. So the industry replaced it with R410A. Which is what most of us probably have right now.
Yeah. That has been the gold standard for the last 15 years or so. And it didn't hurt the ozone, which was great. However, R410A is now being phased out because it has a very high global warming potential.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning, if a system springs a leak, that specific chemical traps heat in the Earth's atmosphere at a tremendously high rate. It's a major greenhouse gas contributor.
Okay, so because of that, as of early 2025, the manufacturing lines just completely stopped putting R410A into new units.
Correct.
And the distributors basically just burned through whatever leftover inventory they had by the summer of 2025, which brings us back to the new 2026 standard.
Right, the A2L refrigerants.
Yeah, these replacements are R444B, which the sources say.
Exactly. They picture the propane tank on their barbecue grill or the natural gas running into their winter furnace. But chemically, those are what we call Class 3 flammables.
Okay, so Class 3 means?
They're highly volatile. They ignite easily. This new A2L classification is completely different. The 2L part is the absolute key to understanding the physics of it. The L stands for low burning velocity.
Low burning velocity, meaning it doesn't just spontaneously combust into a massive fireball if a random spark hits it.
Precisely. The physics of an A2L refrigerant like R454B make it quite difficult to actually ignite.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it requires a very specific, sustained concentration of the gas pooling in a closed area. And on top of that, it requires a direct, continuous, high-energy ignition source, like an actual open flame.
So a static shock from shuffling your feet on the carpet isn't going to blow up your house?
No, not even close. And furthermore, the HVAC industry hasn't just blindly pumped this new stuff into houses. They have spent the last 2 years completely re-engineering the actual hardware.
Yeah, let's talk about that hardware because the sources mention that the new units are fundamentally built differently to mitigate this exact risk.
They absolutely are.
Hmm.
So the new air handlers, that's the part of the system sitting inside your house or up in your attic, they now have highly advanced leak detection sensors baked directly into the circuitry.
Like a smoke detector, but for refrigerant.
Basically, yeah. If the sensor detects even a hint of a refrigerant leak dropping into the airstream, it triggers this automatic shut-off logic. It instantly cuts power to the compressor, completely turns off the system, and then kicks on the blower fan to disperse the gas so it can never, ever reach that required concentration level.
That's incredibly smart.
It is. Honestly, when you look at the mechanical engineering, this A2L refrigerant is exponentially safer sitting in your wall than the high-pressure Class 3 natural gas line that probably already runs right through your house to your kitchen stove.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let me see if I am fully grasping the homeowner experience here. Is this essentially like learning that your car's gas tank is, essentially a bomb filled with highly combustible liquid?
Which it is.
Right. But you confidently put your kids in the back seat and drive 70 miles an hour on the highway every single day because you completely trust the engineering and all the safety systems built around it. I mean, are consumers just letting a misunderstood chemical classification dictate their appliance purchases out of irrational fear?
That is a brilliant analogy. Yes, you are driving around with 20 gallons of highly flammable liquid right under your child's car seat.
It sounds crazy when you say it out loud.
Right, but you don't panic because you understand the engineered safety of the vehicle. The exact same principle applies here with the AC units. The fear of flammable AC units is largely being weaponized by, frankly, unscrupulous salespeople trying to rush you into a purchase.
Wow.
The engineering of these new 2026 units is incredibly robust, and honestly, no one should let the word flammable scare them.
Well, wait a minute, though. If the very engineering required to make this mildly flammable chemical safe involves all these advanced leak sensors, redesigned coils, and automated shutoff circuits, I mean, that sounds incredibly expensive to manufacture.
It is.
Is that advanced technology exactly why the price tag on these new units is about to give homeowners massive sticker shock?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you just hit the nail on the head. That safety engineering is the primary reason for the massive price hike.
How much of a hike are we talking about?
Well, a new 2026 A2L unit is currently running about $800 to $1,500 more than the exact same baseline equivalent would have cost just a few years ago.
Yikes, that is a huge jump.
It is. You're paying for the sensors, the new logic boards, and the specific compressors that have to be rated for A2L operating pressures.
Which naturally makes me wonder, if the new ones are that dramatically expensive, why don't I just keep patching my older R410A unit indefinitely? I mean, is the federal government physically forcing me to rip my old unit out of my yard?
The short answer, and honestly, probably the most important thing you will hear in this entire deep dive, is absolutely not.
Okay, phew.
Yeah, your existing R410AA system is completely legal to run. It is completely legal to repair. No one is coming to confiscate your air conditioner.
And no AC police knocking on the door.
Exactly.
Yeah.
R410A refrigerant is still actively being sold for service work.
But there's a trap there, isn't there? The sources make it painfully clear that while you can repair it, the economics of doing so are rapidly becoming a total nightmare.
Very much so.
Because they aren't manufacturing new R410A equipment or the raw chemical at the same scale anymore, so the supply and demand curve is just shifting violently.
That is the trap, exactly. The EPA has mechanisms in place like reclamation to keep the supply going for older units,
Right.
But it is not cheap by any means.
Actually, I want to dig into that for a second. What exactly is reclamation? Because it just sounds like they are, recycling it.
Well, it is essentially recycling, but on a highly technical industrial scale. When an HVAC tech pulls the old R410A out of a dying system, they can't just vent it into the sky.
Right, because that's illegal.
Exactly. So they capture it in a recovery tank, but that recovered gas is full of system oil, moisture, and acid from the burnt-out compressor.
Oh, gross. So it's basically toxic sludge gas at that point.
Pretty much. So it has to be shipped to an EPA-certified reclamation facility where it undergoes this intense chemical distillation process to strip out all those impurities until it meets the exact purity standards of virgin refrigerant.
And only then can it be resold.
Right. And that complex, heavy-duty supply chain is exactly why the cost of the chemical is skyrocketing.
And we are definitely seeing that in the numbers from the sources. A few years ago, a pound of R410A was maybe, $30 or $40?
Yes, somewhere around there. now. It has jumped to over $100 a pound in many markets. So if your older system has a slow leak in the coil and you need a typical 5-pound recharge just to get through the summer heat, you are looking at $500 strictly for the chemical itself.
And that is just the raw material. That doesn't account for the specialized labor required to fix it.
Right.
Look at our source, Dave Hartzell. He runs a very tight ship, but he still has to charge a $99 dispatch fee just to get his truck into your driveway, plus a $111 diagnostic fee to hook up his gauges and actually find where the leak is.
So that simple recharge is suddenly approaching $1,000.
Easily.
And the parts availability is going to become a totally different headache too, right?
Yeah.
The sources point out that by the time we hit 2030, finding matched replacement coils for older R410A condensers is going to become incredibly difficult.
Oh, near impossible, because manufacturers are shifting entirely to A2L assembly lines. Retooling an assembly line costs millions of dollars.
Yeah, they aren't going to run two separate lines forever. Exactly.
Right.
They physically cannot afford the warehouse space or the manufacturing bandwidth to endlessly stockpile parts for legacy systems that operate at the old pressures.
It's like trying to find an official charging cable for, like, an iPhone 4. Eventually, the entire ecosystem just moves on, and you are left scouring the internet for sketchy aftermarket parts that might not even work right.
That is a perfect way to look at it. You are essentially driving a vintage car at that point. Custom parts, custom headaches.
So what does this all mean? What is the actual strategy here for a homeowner? Because if the repair costs are jumping through the roof, but the new units are $1,500 more expensive, homeowners are just caught between a rock and a hard place.
The strategy requires you to set a hard financial boundary before the system ever breaks.
Okay, tell me more.
Do not replace an 8-year-old system today out of sheer panic, just because the regulations changed. Let it run. But you have to establish a threshold so you don't fall into the sunk cost fallacy.
Like throwing good money after bad.
Precisely. Our industry sources suggest that once your repair bills on an older unit cross the $1,500 mark, or if a major component like the compressor physically grounds out on a 12-year-old system, that is your trigger. You stop fixing it.
Because at that point, you're just paying for a doomed system. But is there any silver lining to biting the bullet and buying the expensive 2026 unit? Like, any good news at all?
Actually, yes, there is. The new A2L units have significantly higher SEER2 efficiency ratings.
SEER2. I see that acronym everywhere on the sides of these AC boxes. That is essentially the miles per gallon rating for your air conditioner. Right?
Exactly right. A higher SEER2 rating means the unit uses way less electricity to remove the exact same amount of heat from your house.
Okay, that's definitely a plus.
And the reason these new units are more efficient actually comes down to the thermodynamic physics of the new R454B refrigerant itself.
Really? It's the chemical that makes it more efficient.
Yeah. It operates at a slightly different pressure and has a totally different volumetric capacity than the old 410A stuff.
Meaning what, exactly? How does a different pressure lower my power bill?
Think of the refrigerant as a sponge that soaks up heat from your living room and wrings it out in your backyard.
Okay, I can picture that.
R454B is a vastly more efficient sponge. Because of its unique pressure properties, the compressor, which is the massive engine inside the unit that uses all the electricity, it doesn't have to work nearly as hard to pump it through the cycle.
Oh, I see.
It transfers heat with way less mechanical effort. So your day-to-day operating costs immediately go down.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. The engine doesn't have to rev as high, so you use less gas, or in this case, less electricity.
Precisely. And when you factor in promotional financing, the math gets very, very interesting.
Financing, like what? Putting it on a credit card?
Well, companies like Synchrony, Wells Fargo, or WiseTech are heavily involved in HVAC-specific financing. When contractors offer promotional financing, they're often talking about 0% APR for a set term, like 36 or 60 months.
Oh, wow, 0% is huge.
It is. So your new monthly payment for the equipment, combined with your newly lowered monthly power bill from that efficiency bump we talked about, often makes the total monthly cash flow a complete wash compared to running your old, inefficient system that constantly needed expensive repairs.
That actually makes the financial pill a lot easier to swallow.
Yeah, when you look at the monthly budget, it's not nearly as scary.
But if the math of replacing the AC is starting to lean toward an upgrade, I feel like the next logical step for any homeowner is looking for government discounts. I mean, we all want a deal.
Naturally.
But here is where the source material drops an absolute bombshell that is going to save our listeners from getting scammed in 2026.
Yes, this is a critical consumer warning. For the last several years, the HVAC industry has heavily advertised federal tax credits, specifically Section 25C and 25D.
Right. Everyone has heard about those.
But those specific federal equipment credits completely expired on December 31st, 2025.
Completely dead, gone. Which means if a contractor is standing in your living room in the summer of 2026, pointing at a new A2L system and telling you that federal IRS tax credits will magically cover a chunk of the cost, that is a blatantly false sales pitch.
Exactly. They're using expired data to close the deal, but that doesn't mean all financial help has vanished.
Oh, good.
While the federal IRS credits are gone, local utility rebates are still very much alive. The catch is that they are intensely, almost frustratingly, hyper-local.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. I want to look at the Oklahoma numbers from our source because they highlight this perfectly.
Let's do it.
So you have the utility company OG&E offering a flat $1,500 per unit HVAC rebate, which maxes out at $3,000 per home. That's a great chunk of change.
It's fantastic.
Then you have OEC offering $200 and $325 a ton for air source heat pumps, also great. But then you look at a rural co-op called Seek Energy. They are offering an absolutely massive $2,000 per ton for geothermal systems, up to $24,000.
$24,000 is life-changing money for a home infrastructure project.
It is. I mean, that pays for a huge portion of the system. But here is where my head starts spinning. Seek Energy only offers that massive rebate in 10 specific counties.
Right.
And notably, it completely excludes Kingfisher County, which is exactly where our expert Dave Hartzell runs his business. So why does this geographic lottery even exist? How is it fair that my neighbor, just across the county line, could get a $24,000 system subsidized, and I get absolutely nothing simply because of where the utility lines are drawn?
It feels incredibly unfair, I know. But it really comes down to the underlying mechanics of how utilities are funded and the physical load on their individual grids.
Okay, how so?
Well, you have investor-owned utilities, municipal utilities funded by local tax bases, and rural electric cooperatives. They all operate under totally different regulatory frameworks. But more importantly, utility companies don't offer rebates out of the goodness of their hearts.
Stroker.
Right. They offer them as a form of demand response.
Demand response, meaning they are trying to manipulate how much power we use.
Essentially, yes. If a utility company has a specific geographic node, say a rapidly growing suburb where the power grid is completely maxed out during those hot summer afternoons, they have a choice.
Okay.
They can either spend $1 billion building a new power plant and upgrading transmission lines, or they can spend a few $1,000,000 subsidizing highly efficient AC units for the homes in that specific zip code.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it is vastly cheaper for them to pay you to use less power than it is for them to generate more. That is exactly why the rebates are so strictly geographically bound.
That completely reframes the rebate conversation. It's not a gift, it's a calculated infrastructure strategy.
Exactly.
But it also means a homeowner cannot rely on a blanket statement from a national website or a well-meaning friend 2 towns over.
This raises an important question about consumer responsibility. You must verify your specific service address directly with your specific utility provider before you count on a single rebate dollar.
Because your zip code dictates everything.
Everything. And this highlights why the timing of your replacement is so crucial.
You mean the difference between replacing it on your schedule versus the machine's schedule?
Exactly. If your vintage R410A system is limping along and you know it's nearing that $1,500 repair threshold we talked about, you need to be getting replacement estimates in March or April.
Before it gets hot.
Yes.
Yeah.
During the spring shoulder season, contractors aren't rushed. They actually have the time to sit down at your kitchen table, verify your specific address against the current hyperlocal utility database, and present you with thoroughly researched options.
Right, because if you wait until an August heat wave when the compressor finally seizes up, you aren't researching municipal tax bases and grid demand response.
No, you're not.
You are sweating in a 95-degree living room, and you are basically going to sign whatever paperwork the first available contractor puts in front of you.
And panic is the absolute enemy of a good financial decision.
It really is. All right, let's synthesize the grain we've covered today because we have entirely decoded that metal box sitting outside your window.
We covered a lot.
We did. We started by unpacking the environmental evolution from R410A to the new A2L refrigerants. We explored the exact thermodynamic physics and the advanced safety engineering, those leak sensors and shut-off circuits that make the term mildly flammable a total non-issue for your family's safety.
Very important point.
Then we ran the hard math on repairing versus replacing, establishing that you shouldn't panic buy, but you also shouldn't throw money at a vintage system past the $1,500 mark. And finally, we uncovered the reality of modern HVAC financing. Federal tax credits are dead, but hyperlocal utility rebates can still save you thousands, provided you do your geographical homework in the spring, not the summer.
And tying all of those complex variables together, the ultimate advice from our industry experts remains remarkably grounding.
Which is?
Buy quality equipment, ensure it is properly sized and installed by a reputable contractor, and maintain it with annual tune-ups.
The basics, really.
Yeah. The physical physics of heat transfer haven't changed. A properly installed system with good airflow and the correct internal charge is going to last you 15 to 20 years, regardless of what specific chemical classification is flowing through its copper lines. The craftsmanship of the installation matters infinitely more than the chemical itself.
That is a highly reassuring takeaway. But before we wrap up this deep dive, there is one detail from the source text that I just can't quite shake.
Oh, God.
We talked about the industry timeline. We went from R12 to R22, then to R410A, and now we are shifting to R454B and R32.
That is the lingering concept I hoped we would touch on. The historical pattern is undeniable. And the critical detail is that these transition cycles are compounding.
Meaning they're getting faster?
They are getting much faster. Environmental regulations are accelerating, and the HVAC industry is already heavily researching the next phase. They're likely moving toward completely natural refrigerants like CO2 and highly refined propane for residential systems in the near future.
Wait, really? So even this massive 2025 shift isn't the final destination? The target is just going to keep moving?
Rapidly. And it poses a fascinating, somewhat troubling question for anyone who owns property. If environmental regulations are forcing the lifeblood of our major home appliances to chemically evolve faster than the physical hardware's actual 20-year lifespan,
Yeah.
are we rapidly approaching a future where core home infrastructure becomes just like our consumer tech?
Wow. Are you talking about planned obsolescence, like realizing your 5-year-old laptop can't run the new operating system?
Exactly. But in this case, it is planned regulatory obsolescence. You might have a perfectly functioning piece of physical hardware sitting out in your yard, but the shifting regulatory environment surrounding the chemical software forces you to upgrade entirely, simply because you can no longer afford or legally source the materials to service the old tech.
That is wild.
And if the fundamental cooling infrastructure of our homes is entering a smartphone-like cyclical upgrade cycle, what does that ultimately mean for the baseline cost of maintaining a home in a progressively warming world?
That is a staggering thought to leave on. The idea that the humming metal box sitting right outside your window right now isn't just a machine that cools your living room. It is a physical timeline of global environmental regulation. And the next time you look out there, you really have to wonder, how long until the rules change again?